I want to just give you an example of sharing your testimony. So the big goal here is I want you to be able to just quickly share your story with somebody. I want you to be able to have a 3 to 5 minute version. I want you to be able to do it longer. If you can do it short, then if you have the chance to do it longer, that will be easy. But I think people have a hard time going shorter than longer. Because once you start, your mouth starts going, all that hot air starts going out, you just can't stop yourself. So really the heart of this is that you never know when you're going to be called upon or have an opportunity to share your faith. And you want to be able to do it precisely and get everything in it. And part of that is just rehearsing it, going over it, sharing it. Your story will always evolve as time goes by. I know when I started sharing my faith when I was 13 up to now, it's changed quite a bit. I've added new parts of my life of being a husband to being a dad. And that's okay. That's part of that. But you need to practice it. So I want to share my story. And then I want you to follow everything that I've been talking about in the email and in this. And I want you to write it out. Remember, there's 3 parts. There's first a part about your life before Christ. Then there's a story of how you met Christ, and then your life after Christ. And so I'm going to sit here. I'm going to put on my timer. I'm going to put 5 minutes. So I got 5 minutes. So this is how I would start. I go, my mom and dad met when they were really young. Both grew up in kind of, religious homes, but more like traditional. And my parents had a lot of baggage, both in family dynamics and in their personal life. They met at a church and they got married real quick. They had 3 boys, literally one after another in the first 4 years. My dad had an anger problem that carried over from some family baggage. And then my mom had some mental instability, and that got highlighted. They had a lot of kids. They didn't really take care of what they needed to take care of. And they got a divorce when I was 5. I spent the next couple of years going back and forth between my mom and dad. And, that wasn't that much fun. My dad always liked to highlight it, who do you love more? Why do you always want to be with your mom? He was very self-conscious of how we loved our mom more. And it wasn't that. It was just my mom was more caring and helping, friendly. I remember when my parents were still married, being, in a drop down living room, kind of looking at my parents fighting, my mom throwing a dish and my dad throwing stuff, and a police being called. And so, growing up, I had this kind of confusion of who my parents were. I knew they didn't have their act together, and I didn't always like being home. When I was around 8, 9, my dad actually had an outburst, and courts got involved. There was some legal stuff, and he actually decided to marry who he was dating at the time, and she had 2 kids, and they went off, and he started a new life, and he didn't talk to me for 10 years. And during that phase, I started getting raised by a single mom. My mom really tried to have the best experience for us, but with her mental instability, mental illness that we found out later, and she started dabbling with drugs. And in the midst of middle school, high school, she had this heavy drug addiction, and all these shady people started coming in on our home. And it was around this time that my friends then started to drink and do drugs. And all I remember is I wasn't like necessarily this, straight edge good kid. All I remember is that my friends started doing stuff that was ruining my mom. And I just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that person. It didn't look fun to me. It didn't look appealing. And so I stopped hanging out with my friends. I remember going into high school and not having any friends. Didn't have a dad in my life. My mom was just all over the place. And I remember I got invited to a church service from a cousin of mine. And I remember I walked in that building. I heard who Jesus was, how he loved me and what he did for me. And I didn't know all the details, but all I remember is that I wanted that. I wanted the peace that all the people had in this room. I wanted the comfort that everybody had in this room. And I wanted to be loved. And I loved the community that was there. And it was June 3rd, 2000 that I decided to put my faith in Jesus for the very first time. Over the next couple of years, my family life didn't get better. My dad didn't immediately call me. Not everything changed like magic. But I got the sense of fulfillment and peace in my life, that I was loved by somebody and that I was cared, and I had a group of people that were going to help me through this chaotic point in my life. Over the next couple of years, I met my wife at my church. I had a similar family background as me. Just I'm so grateful for my wife, Jody. We started a family together. And now really what my life is about now is that really I love being part of the church in any way, because the church saved me in a huge way. Obviously Jesus saved me, but the church was such a shaping in my life, that my pastor and my small group and my community became my family. And I know the power of the church, if done right, could really change someone's life. And now I have a family of my own, and my number one priority is not to take off, is to be present and make sure I set my kids up. And really, I want the Kranda name. I want a new legacy. I don't want this kind of bad legacy of brokenness and mess. I want to set my kids up for a future that's more powerful. And that's what I want to dedicate my life to. And that's what Jesus did for me. And I would love to talk to you more about how you can have the same experiences I have had, and you can put your faith in Jesus. So I would transition that in a couple different ways, but you can see that was under 5 minutes, counting down right now. But what I said all that, I've said it many times, and it's changed over the last 15 years. But what I want you to do is that I want you to take some time and write out, what was your life like before Jesus? How did you meet Jesus? And what was your life after? Have a 3 to 5 minute version. So that at any time you can say, if you're called upon, I can say that at any point. It's not always exactly the same, but you get the idea that I know how to say it because I practice it. And it's really important that you know your testimony. And what you will find is that as you're talking to different types of people, I was just talking to a friend, Tanner, of mine, about Jesus. And, we had an hour and a half long conversation. I focused on different points of that life. I didn't talk about my dad and I having a relationship restored, and we're still trying to figure that out. My mom got over the drug addiction and is in a really healthy place. The power of grandkids, how it restored our family. I didn't talk about a brother of mine who tried to end his life a couple times right in front of me. I didn't talk about the power of me being the first one to finish college and grad school. I didn't talk about all those things because it's 3 to 5 minutes. But if I'm talking to somebody who has a broken relationship with their dad, I can highlight that. If I'm talking with somebody who has mental illness, I can talk about that with my mom. I can highlight different elements in my story depending on the person and depending how much time. But once you have 3 to 5 minutes, it allows you to kind of expand wherever you can. And so right now, take some time, practice that, record yourself, check yourself. Listening to yourself is such a big point, and I would love for you to share it with me, either in written form or send me the YouTube link. I would love to watch that and hear your story.